In the dim glow of the executive suite's emergency lights, where the city's skyline stretched out like an indifferent spectator, a lone janitor named Alex paused mid-swipe with his mop, his heart pounding as he watched the CEO of the towering corporation teeter on the edge of the rooftop ledge. The wind howled that night, carrying whispers of despair that no one else in the bustling building below seemed to hear, but Alex, with his calloused hands and weary eyes, had seen the shadows creeping in for weeks, the subtle tremors in the man's hands, the hollow gaze that lingered too long on the void below. In that frozen moment, as rain began to slicken the concrete, Alex dropped his bucket and lunged forward, his voice lost in the storm but his grip unyielding, pulling the powerful man back from the brink just as the first crack of thunder echoed the unspoken cry for help that had gone unnoticed by the world. If you believe in the power of kindness and second chances, hit that like button, drop a comment below sharing your own story of compassion, share this video with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks for more tales that remind us of the humanity in us all. Alex Thompson had never imagined his life would boil down to the quiet rhythms of a mop and bucket in the echoing halls of Harrington Tower, a gleaming monument to corporate ambition that pierced the New York skyline like a needle of glass and steel. At 42, he was a single father to his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, whose laughter was the only light piercing the fog of his daily grind. Widowed 3 years earlier when a sudden car accident claimed his wife, Sarah, Alex had spiraled into a darkness so profound it nearly swallowed him whole. Nights blurred by empty bottles, days haunted by the weight of bills stacking like accusations on his kitchen table. But Lily's innocent eyes, wide with unspoken fears, had pulled him back. He quit drinking cold, took the janitorial job at the tower for its steady pay and health benefits that covered her asthma treatments, and vowed to be the rock she needed, even if it meant scrubbing toilets while the suits above him chased fortunes he could only dream of. His shifts started at dusk, when the executives filed out like migrating birds, leaving behind coffee stains and crumpled memos that spoke of deals worth millions, worlds away from his reality of scraping by on ramen and second-hand clothes. Yet, in the solitude of those empty offices, Alex found a strange solace, his mind wandering to memories of Sarah's gentle touch, or Lily's drawings taped to their tiny apartment fridge, reminders that life, fragile as it was, demanded persistence. The CEO, Victor Harrington, was a figure of myth in those halls, a self-made billionaire whose face graced business magazines, his story one of rags to riches that inspired TED Talks and boardroom toasts. At 55, he commanded an empire of tech innovations, his days a whirlwind of mergers, investor calls, and relentless pressure to outpace competitors in a cutthroat industry. To the outside world, Harrington was invincible, his sharp suits and commanding presence masking the cracks forming beneath. But Alex, invisible in his janitor's uniform, had begun to notice the man during his late-night cleanings. Harrington often stayed past midnight, his office light a solitary beacon on the top floor, where Alex would empty trash bins filled with half-eaten meals and scribbled notes that hinted at sleepless torment. At first, it was small things, the way Harrington's shoulders slumped when he thought no one was watching, or how he'd stare out the floor-to-ceiling windows, his reflection ghostly against the city lights, fingers drumming an anxious rhythm on the glass. Alex recognized those signs all too well. They mirrored his own battles after Sarah's death, the quiet erosion of spirit that no amount of success could shield against. He'd seen it in himself, the skipped meals turning into lost appetite, the forced smiles that never reached the eyes, the isolation that grew like ivy, choking out connections. As weeks turned into months, Alex's observations deepened into quiet concern. His own struggles had taught him the language of hidden pain, the way despair whispered before it roared. Lily's asthma attacks had forced him to learn vigilance, spotting the wheeze before it became a crisis, and now, that same instinct drew his gaze to Harrington. One evening, while polishing the executive elevator, Alex overheard fragments of a phone call drifting from the cracked office door. Harrington's voice, usually booming with authority, cracked with exhaustion as he argued with his estranged wife about missed family events, his words laced with regret that echoed Alex's own guilt over long hours away from Lily. That night, as Alex mopped the marble floors, He found a discarded journal page in the trash. Hasty scrawls about, ending the charade, no more burdens, words that chilled him to his core. He pocketed it, not out of nosiness, but from a gnawing fear that this titan of industry was crumbling, unseen by the aides and assistants who buzzed around him like bees, too focused on quotas to notice the human fraying at the seams. Alex wrestled with doubt. Who was he, a mere janitor, to presume anything about a man like Harrington? His own life was a patchwork of survival, rushing home at dawn to make Lily breakfast before school, juggling doctor visits and overdue rent notices, his body aching from the physical toll of his job. Yet, the empathy born from his losses compelled him, a silent vow forming in his heart to watch closer, to be the eyes no one else bothered to open. The challenges mounted like storm clouds for Alex, each day a test of endurance that blurred the line between duty and despair. Lily's asthma worsened with the changing seasons, her inhaler a constant companion that drained his meager savings, forcing him to skip meals to afford refills. At work, he faced the indifference of the corporate machine, co-workers who mocked his quiet demeanor, supervisors who piled on extra shifts without extra pay, all while the executives above lived in a bubble of privilege. Harrington's warning signs intensified, building a suspense that gnawed at Alex's nerves. The CEO's once impeccable appearance grew disheveled, dark circles framing eyes that darted with paranoia, and Alex caught glimpses of pill bottles rattling in desk drawers during his cleanings. One particularly grueling night, after Lily's bedtime story over a crackling phone call from the break room, Alex ascended to the top floor to find Harrington slumped over his desk, a half-empty whiskey glass tipping precariously, his breathing ragged as if fighting an invisible weight. Alex hesitated at the door, mop in hand, his heart racing with the urge to speak, but fear held him back. What if he was wrong? What if his intrusion cost him his job, the fragile lifeline for his daughter? The struggle tore at him, memories of his own rock bottom flashing like lightning. The night he'd stood on a bridge, staring into the abyss, only pulled back by a stranger's kind word, a random act that echoed now in his reluctance to ignore another's pain. Slowly, things began to shift, the narrative of isolation giving way to tentative bridges in the unlikeliest of places. Alex started leaving small gestures in Harrington's office. A fresh cup of coffee from the vending machine during his rounds, or a neatly folded newspaper with uplifting headlines circled in pen, anonymous acts born from his belief that kindness could be a lifeline. He didn't know if they were noticed, but one evening, as he emptied the trash, Harrington looked up, his eyes meeting Alex's for the first time, a flicker of surprise cutting through the haze. No words were exchanged, but in that gaze, Alex saw a crack in the armor, a silent acknowledgement that fueled his resolve. His own life mirrored this evolution. Lily's latest doctor's visit brought hope with a new treatment plan, easing the financial strain just enough for Alex to breathe, and he found solace in volunteering at a local support group for widowers, where stories of resilience reminded him that struggle was not the end, but a forge for strength. Yet, the suspense built relentlessly. The journal entries grew darker, Harrington's absences from meetings whispered about in the staff room, and Alex's nights became sleepless vigils, his mind racing with scenarios of what might happen if he didn't act soon. The turning point came on a rain-slicked autumn evening, the city shrouded in mist that blurred the boundaries between hope and despair. Alex, finishing his shift earlier than usual to attend Lily's school play, decided on a whim to check the rooftop access, a rarely used space where Harrington had been spotted pacing in recent weeks. The wind whipped through the open door as he climbed the stairs, his janitor's keys jangling like a warning bell, and there, against the railing, stood the CEO, his tie loosened, face etched with a finality that stopped Alex's heart. Time slowed, the rain pattering like tears on the concrete as Alex approached, his steps deliberate, drawing on every ounce of his past pain to fuel his courage. He didn't shout or grab immediately. Instead, he stood beside Harrington, sharing the view of the twinkling lights below, his presence a quiet anchor in the storm. In that charged silence, Alex's own story poured out in his mind. The loss of Sarah, the battles with darkness, the redemption found in Lily's smile. And though no words passed, the empathy radiated, pulling Harrington back inch by inch from the edge. As thunder rumbled, Harrington stepped away, collapsing against the wall in sobs that shook his frame, the crisis averted not by grand heroics, but by the simple act of being seen. In the aftermath, the transformation unfolded like dawn after a long night, emotions swelling in waves that left both men forever changed. Harrington, confronted with his vulnerability, sought help, a quiet leave of absence for therapy, mending bridges with his family, and restructuring his company to prioritize employee well-being, inspired by the invisible workers like Alex who kept the world turning. For Alex, the recognition came unexpectedly. Harrington, learning of his savior's identity through security footage, reached out with gratitude that transcended words, a promotion to facilities manager with a salary that lifted the burden of bills, scholarships for Lily's future, and a personal bond that bridged their worlds. Alex watched Lily thrive, her laughter freer, her drawings now including a tall building where heroes clean and save, a testament to how one act rippled into redemption. The story of that night spread in hushed tones through the tower, a reminder that warning signs, when spotted by compassionate eyes, could rewrite fates, turning strangers into saviors and despair into dawn. As the echoes of that rainy night faded into memory, Alex often reflected on how close they both had come to the edge, and how a single dad's quiet vigilance had bridged the chasm between worlds. It was a tale of second chances, of kindness whispering in the shadows, proving that even in the cold heights of ambition, humanity could prevail. If this story has touched your heart, reminding you of the quiet heroes in our lives, please like, comment, and subscribe. It means the world to us at Kindness Speaks, and helps spread these messages of hope. Before we end, drop a comment below with the words, "Kindness saves," if you've ever been touched by an unexpected act of compassion.